You want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real as Roland Martin Unfiltered. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered daily digital show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. You can make this possible. Speaking of fighting for the honor of one's name, the family of Andrew Brown Jr., they plan to file a federal lawsuit against the sheriff's deputies who were involved in his shooting death on April 21st. This comes after yesterday's news conference where DA Andrew Womble Jr. announced that the shooting was justified and he was not going to pursue charges against those particular officers. Chase Lynch, who is one of the attorneys for the Brown family based there in North Carolina, he also says the family is demanding that the family wants to see full unredacted body camera footage as well as details from the State Bureau of Investigation, who the DA said led their particular, who led the investigation part of this. Monique, what about that in terms of the lawsuit of the family against the sheriff's deputies in federal courtroom?
I don't see it holding much promise. This is another one of those areas where the prosecution, the state level, had a wide amount of discretion, and they are using it in a manner that really most of us don't like, don't approve of, think is wrongful. But the federal standards are so different than that, that I don't think that there will be any hurry up because a lawsuit is filed. And I say this at risk of every single lawyer who's on this case because I know them, but this just to me is not the winning strategy.
So, Robert, what is a winning strategy? If you're the family, what do you do? Because the only thing left is what? Wait for the FBI to see what happens with their investigation?
Well, I wouldn't say wait for the FBI, but I think an analogous case in many ways would be the Ahmaud Arbery case. Because initially, it was not charged by the local DA, went to another DA, was not charged by that one, went to a third DA, was not charged. It wasn't until the full video came out that you had the Georgia Bureau of Investigations come in and then have the charges put in. So I don't think we should think of this as being the only bite of the apple that's going to happen. You're going to have state level investigations. We are at some point going to get the full unredacted body cam footage. We are going to get those Ring video doorbell cameras coming out. We will find out witness statements, etc. This is why it's so important to have to vote in local elections and have local prosecutors that actually support and believe in the Constitution of the United States of America. Because the way the process is supposed to work is you kill somebody, we indict you, we have a trial. And that the point of the trial is so that the public understands the evidence against the individual, that we don't have a secret star chamber, that the jury gets the opportunity to hear the witness testimony and see all the evidence, and come out with a resolution that the public can accept. When it's simply a prosecutor behind closed doors saying, in my personal judgment, in my individualized opinion, this should not go forward, there should not be a prosecution, that's something that the public cannot accept. So I do think we'll see more bites at the apple at this on the state level. As far as the federal hate crimes laws, this is part of the reason we need to reform those laws because they've been in place so long. It's nearly impossible often for the Justice Department to build a prima facie case to even make charges, despite even the most incongruent evidence. So it's time for us to take a look at those charges that are on the books. We saw this with the Asian American community recently, the enhancement of hate crime protection for them. We should do the same for African Americans against police brutality.
Well, the thing here, though, look, Scott, I understand the point Robert makes there in terms of other investigations, but you can't compare it to Ahmaud Arbery. The difference there was it went to three different prosecutors, and then the third one recused themselves and invited the Georgia Bureau of Investigation in. North Carolina law, the DA has to invite the state attorney general of North Carolina. Already is on record saying he would investigate, but the DA has to ask them to come in. So because this DA has the jurisdiction, it's limited in terms of what can happen next. The state can't come in and say, okay, we're now going to take this thing over. So in North Carolina, it appears as if that's it.
Well, but wait a minute now. I talk about the civil justice system all the time. Am I missing something? The criminal justice system may give punishment, but it doesn't bring back the person that's deceased.
Well,
These are civil-
that's why I asked the question at the outset when the family said they were going to file a federal lawsuit against the sheriff's deputies. That's a civil lawsuit.
Yeah.
I'm speaking of when actions taken in North Carolina on the criminal side. The district attorney has the jurisdiction by him choosing not to pursue charges. That's it in that particular county. There's no other way in North Carolina for the state to move forward in a criminal investigation because the DA's already rendered his decision.
Yeah, no, I agree with my colleague. That's pretty much it. You can't appeal a discretionary investigation that says they're not going to go forward, which is why you've got to focus on the federal lawsuit on the civil side. He's not coming back, but compensation is a possibility. And by the way, they can file in state court too. They can file state charges in federal court as well and have ancillary jurisdiction. The only thing left for this family to do is to get a lawyer to file their lawsuit. They can file in the state claims in the state court. They can file federal claims in the federal court, or they could do both, right? They could do both in federal court. And if they can survive a motion for summary judgment or a motion to dismiss, then that's where their justice is. That's where their civil justice is. They get compensated if they win. But in either justice system, criminal or civil, the deceased is not coming back. And you can get discovery, by the way. You can get mediation on the civil side, and you really can take the depositions of the bad actors. You can take depositions of the state actors, if you will, as well as the DA in a civil proceeding, and you get a lot more evidence and a lot more information about what happened and the exposure and liability of not only the state, but also the bad actors through the civil justice process.
But how about this, Robert, and weigh in on this one here? Okay, so this DA made a decision. What are the people, first of all, this DA is running for office, Superior Court judge. What if there's a new DA? Can a new DA pick it up and actually indict?
Absolutely, they can, and also there's another factor. Remember, the judge ruled that this information cannot be made public for 30 to 45 days when the body cam footage will be released to the public. There's every chance and every opportunity the information gets made public, and there's no pressure put on the DA to at least reopen the case or to invite the Attorney General in to be able to investigate it from a state level. So I wouldn't give up on this just yet, because I do think that as information becomes more public, as public outcry, these people are still public officials who have to respond to the will of the people. And as that stuff grows, you may see this reopen and see another opportunity to have criminal justice in this case, as well as this civil justice that Scott mentioned.
Monique, you're shaking your head.
Because no, the prosecutor is not supposed to respond to the will of the people. That is exactly the opposite. I mean, the reason why we protest is because we protest an injustice. That doesn't mean that a prosecutor who's doing what he or she believes the law requires is supposed to change their decision, even a discretionary decision, based on the fact that people are angry.
But based on the fact of a fresh new look, a new prosecutor certainly can do that.
One second, Scott. 1 second. Monique finished, and Scott.
Okay, so what we're finding, and this is another case where we're finding it, what we really need to know is why they came out there in riot gear in the first place. What we really need to know is why, to execute a drug warrant, they had, a SWAT team ×5. What we really need to know is why they were predisposed to think that this man, who was not some upper level criminal, not even like a low level felon, why any of that was necessary, because they then are ready. They're at the ready for something terrible to happen. But when all you're looking at is the video, and when there's a tie, the tie is going to always end up going to law enforcement. So, for instance, the car itself is viewed in the eyes of the law as a deadly weapon. So even if the decedent was backing up and then going forward in order to get away, and it's arguable that any one of those officers was placed in danger, even a hair on their chinny chin chin was touched, then a court is going to uphold whichever one of those officers or all three of them shot. That is the unfortunate part of the matter. We've got to change laws so that we don't end up in a position where we are sending law enforcement inappropriately to start wars on civilians, because that's what happened that day. And even if the decedent got scared and tried to get away, and in the course of getting away, placed one of those officers in danger, it ain't gonna go right. It's not. And it's gonna be hard to prove that any of that was because of race. This is very different than any of the other cases that we've been looking at. And so I agree, frankly, with the prosecutor saying this is a tragedy. What I don't agree with is the decision that was made. But that's because I too, like everybody else, haven't seen the full video. I don't know if seeing the full video is gonna help us. I wanna see it, but I don't know if it's gonna help.
Scott?
Well, I mean, some of what you say is the obvious, but you certainly have to continue to protest and keep the pressure on, because justice delayed is justice denied. And if you get a new prosecutor, absolutely, a new prosecutor can take a fresh look at it and determine that it is worth going forward. And that's only going to come from political and public pressure. I mean, that's what happened in the Cosby case that you know very well. They cut a deal on the civil side and they agreed not to prosecute him. And then years later, they got a new prosecutor. Hell, he ran on prosecuting Cosby, and then, Cosby got prosecuted. It's probably a bad example because he shouldn't have been prosecuted. But
yes,
my point is discretion. You have discretion.
Right.
The only difference between criminal proceedings.
Monique, hold on. Monique, hold on. Hey, I stopped me from interrupting you. You can't interrupt him. Scott?
No, but he's on mic.
No, I got it. Scott, finish your point, then I'll go back to Monique, then I'll go to Robert. Go.
Okay, so the DAs and federal prosecutors have a huge amount of discretion. And if you can convince one to take a fresh look at it and they convince them that it's worth pursuing, then that can certainly happen. But again, you still have the criminal justice piece helps you on the civil side normally. But sure, you got to keep the pressure on and get a different decision, throw some resources behind it, and then let them bring the prosecution. Because there's some cases that have to be tried, Roland, whether they're tough or not. There's some that have to be tried because the public needs to have confidence in the prosecution and the justice system and doing what's right, even if you may not be able to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. You got to try.
Monique?
What happened in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and this is not a subject that I speak on ever, but what happened there is the exact reason why prosecutors should not change their minds with the change of their political parties or with the change of election cycles. They are to uphold an oath with neither.
But it happened.
Scott, she's talking.
They are.
Why don't you just let me debate her?
With neither fear.
Because the audience can't hear what either one is saying if you're talking over each other.
Well,
Monique,
they are
go.
to uphold an oath with neither fear nor favor, with a fair and impartial view of the evidence. And if the evidence doesn't change, then the fact that a lynch mob is waiting outside their door or waiting on their Twitter feed should not change the decision to prosecute or not prosecute. So what I am saying here is that no, that is not the reason why we protest. We don't protest so that we can change the just discretion of a prosecutor. We protest so that we can change laws so that we don't end up in this position that we are in right now. But no, the reason why I want to be able to trust in prosecutors is because they know the things we don't know. So if we see the evidence and it looks like, oh my God, the way it looked for us in George Floyd, the difference between what they showed us and what a separate camera of a teenage girl looked like, fine. But if
you add all kinds of facts into the debate. You add all kinds of facts into the debate. It happens all the time.
Robert, go ahead. Robert, go ahead.
You may not like it, but it does.
Robert, go ahead.
But this is why I think that we have to calm down and wait for the additional evidence to be made public. The judge said 30 to 45 days for the release of the video. We still need to find out the neighbor's Ring camera video, what is on that. Also, through the civil justice system, we'll be finding out more information about the state of mind of the police officers, the ones involved. And I think once that information comes out, it may very well be that the judge, either the DA has to recuse himself and allow the state to come in, or they'll have to reopen the issue. But I don't think we should assume this is a fait accompli, that we are done with this discussion. I do think there will be more so coming from the state going forward.
All right, folks, back to that Roland Martin Unfiltered video in just one moment.
It's time to be smart. When we control our institutions, we win. This is the most important news show on television of any racial background. Y'all put $2, $3, $4, $5, $10, $15, $20, $30 on this and keep this going. What you've done, Roland, since this crisis came out in full bloom. Anybody watching this, tell your friends. Go back and look at the last 2 weeks, especially of Roland Martin Unfiltered. I mean, hell, go back and look at the last 2 days. You've had sitting United States senators today, Klobuchar and Harris. Whatever you have that you can bring to Roland Martin Unfiltered to support it, please do, because this information may literally save your life.
Watch Roland Martin Unfiltered daily at 6 p.m. Eastern on YouTube, Facebook, or Periscope, or go to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered Daily Digital Show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Our goal is to get 20,000 of our fans contributing $50 each for the whole year. You can make this possible. RolandMartinUnfiltered.com.